going on, guys? Welcome back to some more Pixel Gun 3D. I'm Exotic Gaming, and I hope you guys are hyped for today's video because look at this. We have a tier list once again. As I scroll down here, you can see I have every single heavy weapon to ever exist in Pixel Gun 3D. It's like 161 different weapons, and this also includes weapons that were completely removed from the game. You remember the Smart Bullet Bazooka or the Judge? Yeah, you can't get those weapons anymore. No one has them. But in today's video, we're going to be ranking those weapons alongside all 161 heavy weapons that have ever existed in Pixel Gun 3D. We're going to be ranking them from worst to best, and let's see what happens, right? Before we actually start, guys, comment down below your #1 favorite heavy weapon in this game and your #1 least favorite heavy weapon. I'd love to see what everybody has to say. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe because this video is going to be long. It's going to be really hard for me to actually make, so please show your support by just taking a second and hit that like button. It really means a lot. I'm also going to link this video, which you guys can see right here down below in the description. This is all primary weapons. I made an entire video about a week ago or so where I actually listed every single primary weapon from worst to best in Pixel Gun 3D. So after you watch this video, watch that one because it's going to be just as awesome as this one. Anyways, with that being said, get some water, get some snacks, sit back, relax. It might be an hour long. Hope you guys enjoy. To start things off here, we have the OX Bad Code, this awesome weapon right here. Now, unfortunately, I think this thing is cool, but it's not good. This weapon is actually already an F- weapon because when this weapon existed in the game, it was literally impossible to get a single kill with it. I remember when I used to do my gun game challenges back in the day, and I got to this one, it took like 5 minutes to get one single kill. It was impossible. So this weapon is probably one of the least powerful heavy weapons to ever exist in this game, and it is deserving of an F- rating. Next up, we got the A-Killer. Now, the A-Killer is interesting. It's one of those weapons that's pretty cool, but it doesn't really stand out, Like, if you ever tell people A-Killer in Pixel Gun 3D, they're going to be like, huh? What is that thing? I don't even know what that weapon is, right? So, honestly, I'm going to probably put this thing between B and C, and I'll say C, and I want to be very clear about something before we get too far into this video. If there's anything that you disagree with, that's fine. Comment down below what you think you would change. But before you do that, C is good in Pixel Gun 3D. The difference between C and A and S tier is very, very small. The difference between C and F is very, very big, right? There are so many OP heavy weapons in Pixel Gun 3D. The vast majority of them are ridiculously powerful. So, like, I could probably put almost all of them as S tier, right? But I'm going to make very small differences between all of them so I can actually have a proper tier list, right? So C is still good. Let's just be very clear about that. If you see a weapon ranked at C, like the A-Killer, that still means it's a good weapon. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's continue. Next up, we got the Aboard Puncher. Now, this is another one of those weapons that's kind of a bit forgotten, even though it wasn't released too long ago, but it's still better than the A-Killer, in my personal opinion. I'd actually say it's a pretty solid gun. It's borderline A, as a matter of fact. And I'm going to put it as an A-tier weapon. It's good. If you have it, it's going to get the job done. Next up, Adamant Bomber. Adamant Bomber was ridiculously OP back in the day. If anybody played Pixel Gun 3D in 2016, they will remember when this thing was the most annoying weapon to ever exist. I don't like it because of that, but I'm not going to put my feelings to hearts because it's still a very good gun. And it gets the job done. It's a bit of a spammy weapon, but it's still a B tier, and it's pretty powerful. That's all I got to say there. Next up, we have this thing here, the Alchemist Staff. Who remembers this thing? Because I just recently got it, and in all honesty, I've really, it's just a B tier, It's not like that spectacular. I literally spent $20, believe it or not, to get this thing, and I would say it was not worth $20, so maybe I'm a bit salty because of that, but hey, it's a B-tier weapon. Next up, we got this thing, the Alien Cannon. And unfortunately, the Alien Cannon shares the same fate as the Alien Rifle, and that is pretty underwhelming. It's very hard to get kills with this thing. It's not that powerful. It's cool. It's got ricocheting, which is neat in a map like Silent School or Pool Party, but it's just not that powerful. And I'm actually going to put it as F tier. It's probably B tier, or D tier, I should say. You know what? Let's go put it as D tier. And I might move that down to F as this video goes on, but it's just not that great, and I'm not impressed with it. One weapon that I am impressed with, though, is the Alien Shuriken Thrower. This is a weapon that very few people have. It's actually one of the rarest weapons in Pixel Gun 3D, and I would like everybody who has it to comment down below. Just say, I have Alien Shuriken Thrower. Just comment that, and I want to see how many people actually do, right? But I'm going to put this weapon as an A tier weapon because it's actually really, really good. And I enjoy using it a lot. It's very, very fun. And it just looks cool as well, you know? Who doesn't love shurikens? It's awesome. Anti-Gravity Blaster. Now, this thing back in 2014 was literally the best weapon in the entire game. There was nothing that stood even close. So back in 2014, this weapon was S+ tier. But, unfortunately, it's not really the same anymore. I would say that the Anti-Gravity Blaster is probably just an average C tier heavy weapon now. It's kind of unfortunate because this weapon has such a good legacy, but it's fallen down in recent times. So, C tier for the Anti-Gravity Blaster. Next up, we got the Apocalypse. This is the newer version of the Apocalypse, might I add, and I love this thing. It's one of the cooler looking heavy weapons in my personal opinion, and unfortunately, it's still not the best in the entire world. It's very slow at firing. A lot of times, it doesn't even do a one-shot kill. So it's borderline BC. I'm probably going to put it as a C tier weapon. Now, a weapon that I'm going to have to unfortunately rank below the newer Apocalypse is the older Apocalypse. Who remembers this thing? This thing was like 2014 Pixel Gun 3D. This was actually the first version of the Armageddon. So you got the Apocalypse before the Armageddon, right? And unfortunately, even back then, it wasn't that great, right? This was like the original rocket launcher. This was the very first rocket launcher to ever exist in Pixel Gun. But now, you know, you can't even use it anymore. And very quickly after it was released, everybody wanted to use the Armageddon, which was much better. And even still, the Armageddon now is still not that fantastic. It's, you know, it's hold its own for quite a while, but it's just, you know, it's a C tier average weapon, which I do have to say is still good. As I said, C is still good. It's just there are a lot of other weapons now that are as good, if not better, than the Armageddon. But I love that thing. The Armageddon holds a special place in my heart because it was one of the very first rocket launchers to ever exist in Pixel Gun 3D. Now we have the Armadillo. Now, the Armadillo is interesting because this weapon is actually very, very powerful. I'm going to put this as our first S-tier weapon because I remember for the longest time, this thing was a one-shot kill. And if you put the right modules and stuff onto this thing, it still is. So, I mean, if that's not a good enough reason why this thing isn't S-class, I don't know what is. It's very, very good. And now we have something that is kind of, I don't even know what this is. The Atomic Splitter is what it's called. When did this thing come out? Can somebody let me know? Because, like, I don't even know. I think it's B tier. Maybe it's C tier? It's debatable. I don't know. I'm probably going to put it as a C tier just because I don't even remember this thing. And I'm going to say that it's probably going to be very similar to something like the A-Killer or the Apocalypse. But, hey, moving on here, we got the Automatic Decorator. This is an A tier. Automatic Decorator, when this thing came out, was really, really OP, and it still is quite powerful. It shoots out ornaments for a Christmas tree. It's very unique. Very few people have it. It's very rare. I have it. I feel pretty cool whenever I use it, and it's a solid A-tier weapon. Really, really good. Unfortunately, one that is not is the Avalanche. This is an F-tier weapon. Whenever I've ever used this thing, I've always dreaded it because I've never been able to get good gameplay with it. It sucks, and there's only one other weapon like this that's probably worse, and we're going to get to that later on in this video. But we have the base cannon now, and the base cannon is still a very solid weapon in Pixel Gun 3D. I'm going to put it as a C tier, you know, just like a lot of these other weapons that were released in 2014, like the Anti-Gravity Blaster and the Armageddon. C is still good, and it still holds its own as a very solid gun. Little side notes, the base cannon is one of my very first gameplay videos I ever made on Pixel Gun 3D. I literally got a perfect 20-0 game, and I'll link that video down below in the description if you guys want to check it out. Anyways, moving on. We're taking too much time. The Bastion. Bastion's another one of those things that's probably C tier at this point. It's not quite D tier, but it's C tier. It's starting to go downhill, though, so it could fall into D tier by next year. We'll have to see. Next up, though, we got this thing, the Battle Falcon. This is an S tier weapon. It's debatable that it could be S plus tier, but we're going to save S plus for very, very special weapons. Everybody uses this thing. You always know whenever you hear it because it's got a very distinctive sound and it's ridiculously powerful. That's all I got to say there. This thing here, the Bedivere, right? I really think it should be called the Belvedere, but it's called the Bedivere. This is another one of those ridiculously powerful things. It's debatable that it could be S tier, but I'm going to put it at A tier because there are a couple of weapons that I would say are very similar to it that should be deserving of that S tier rating. Next up, Big B's Oven. This is an S tier weapon. It is very powerful. If you have the chance to ever get this, get it because it's one of the best heavy weapons in this entire game. Straight up. It's really, really good. Then we got the Big Buddy. Back in 2015 to 2018, this would have been an S plus tier. Everybody used the Big Buddy. I love this thing. It's awesome. It's a whole freaking cannon from a pirate ship that you just carry in your hand. It's ridiculous. But unfortunately, over the years, it's gone downhill, and it's not as powerful as it used to be. It's still a B tier weapon. I would say it's better than something like the Apocalypse or the Armageddon, but it's not quite A tier anymore. Next up, let's talk about this thing right here, the Big Data. The Big Data is better than the Big Buddy. It's another big weapon, and it's probably an A tier. It's a very solid gun. It's really cool. It's got that little tech, like, inside the code vibe, and I've always been a fan of the design of this thing. But, yeah, it's going to be hard for weapons to crack that S tier class, and we're going to have to see which ones do later on in this video. We have this thing here, the Big Fatality Gun, and it's another one of those weapons that's charge up, shoots. I've honestly not really had the best experience with this thing, believe it or not, despite it having a cool name and stuff. I'm actually going to put it as a D tier. Maybe some people would disagree, but I'm not a fan of it. There's another gun called the Manga Gun, which is basically the black and white version of this thing, and I think that one is personally a lot better than the Big Fatality Gun. But, hey, moving on, I digress. We have the Blighter here. The Blighter's pretty good. It's better than the Bastion, but it's only better by a little bit. So it's going to be a B tier weapon, and it's cool. I like the design more than the Bastion. I've never been a fan of the Bastion's weird, like, brown color. It doesn't really fit the Pixel Gun 3D aesthetic. Sort of like the Aboard Puncher, but the Aboard Puncher's cooler, and it's also A tier. It's good. It's better than the Bastion. But, yeah, Blighter is a B tier weapon. Next up, we got the Bomber Cat. This is easily an S tier weapon. It could be S plus tier. And I'm really tempted to put it into S plus tier, but I really would like to save S plus for like maybe 5 to 6 total weapons in the entire heavy section. Bomber Cat, you remember when I did a review on this thing back in the day, a couple months ago? I got insane gameplay with it, and it's just a really, really cool set. It's a freaking cat bombing gun. It's just awesome. I don't know, dude. Bomber Slinger. This is an interesting one because I want to put it higher than what it probably should be. You know, I would be putting this thing at like B tier, but honestly, I would say C tier. Just because I haven't used it recently, to be fair. And I think if I started to use it now, I would not be that impressed with it. So I think C tier, which is still good. C equals good, okay, right? It's average and good and very happy. But, you know, it's going to be very similar to something like your Armageddon or your Anti-Gravity Blaster. Moving on, we got this, the Boom Blaster. Haven't really used this thing too much. I've only seen a couple of videos of people using this thing, and I'm pretty sure it's a B tier weapon. I could be wrong. It could be A tier, but I'm going to put it at B tier just to be safe. Next up, we got this thing, the Borders Eraser. I never got this thing. I spent like $200 for the whatever that primary or the sniper version of the Ultimatum is, but I'm pretty sure this is one of those things that's probably going to be S plus tier. Just because I've never used it before, though, I can't put it as S plus tier. I don't want to put something in S plus tier if I've never used it before, right? Because it could be more likely an S tier weapon. But it's probably S plus tier, and I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on whether or not it should be S or S plus tier. We got this thing, the Celebrational Bazooka. Now, it's one of those weapons that I really wish was better. It literally says USA #1 on it. And I'm from America, all right? I love my country. But unfortunately, Celebrational Bazooka is not that good. It sucks. But, hey, I'm going to have to put it as a D tier weapon. It's pretty underwhelming when you use this thing. It's just not that great. We have the Cerebrus right now. Cerberus Cerebrus. This one, I've loved. I've really loved this thing. It is so cool. It is so powerful. And I've always gotten good gameplay with it. In all honesty, I'm really tempted to put it as an S plus tier, but I'm going to hold. I'm going to put it as S tier. As much as people probably want me to put it as S plus, I'm going to keep it as S tier. We got the Champion Laser Cannon, or Champion Solar Cannon, sorry. This thing used to be insane. I remember when this thing came out in 2018, early 2018. It was literally the best thing in the entire game. Everybody used it, but unfortunately, over the years, it's gone downhill, and now it's probably a B tier. Pretty solid gun, but it's nothing to write home about. Like, if you have to spend money to get that thing, you probably shouldn't, There are other better weapons like the Cerberus and the Battle Falcon that you should be getting first. Now we got the Charge Cannon right here. I remember when this thing first came out, it was cool. It was really, really cool, but unfortunately, it's kind of underwhelming. I would still say it's a bit better than the Big Fatality gun, but I don't know if it's better to the point where it could be C tier. Like, I really don't get great gameplay with the Charge Cannon anymore. And in all honesty, I'm actually going to put it at D tier. Just because, the charge weapons are hard to use in Pixel Gun. And unless it's a one-shot kill, it's really not that great, right? So, hey, continuing on, we're taking too much time. We got the Cherry Bomb. Cherry Bomb was released right around the same time as the Big Buddy, and I love the Cherry Bomb. It's awesome. It's so freaking cool. Unfortunately, it's average nowadays. In 2021, there's nothing that special about it. There's a lot of other weapons very similar to it. And in all honesty, it's basically almost the same thing as the Bastion. So, hey, it's a C tier. Still good. Still holds its own. But it's certainly not rising up in the ranks in recent years. Now, Christmas Ultimatum. I'm going to put this as S plus tier. This is our very first S plus weapon in Pixel Gun 3D. When it first came out a couple years ago, it was the #1 best weapon in the entire game. And guess what? It still is one of the very best weapons. You still see tons of people using this thing. It is ridiculously powerful. Most of the time, it's a one-shot kill with a pretty fast firing rate. It's got all the right stuff, cluster bomb, everything. It's insane, and it's definitely deserving of S+. We got the Circus Cannon. I don't really know this thing too much. I very rarely use it. If I'm going to be using a cannon, I'm going to be using the Big Buddy. You know what? This thing's about the same as the Big Buddy. It's going to be another B-tier weapon. There's not really much difference between the two. Next up, this thing here, the Clockwork Cannon. I don't know much about this thing either. It's going to be another C-tier weapon just because I think it's a pretty average weapon. Gets the job done. It's probably B-tier, actually. Let's go put it as B-tier, right? That way people are pretty happy with that rating. And we have this, the Cole Frightener. Cole Frightener is probably an A-tier weapon. It's debatably S, but, there are some very powerful things in S. So I'm going to put it as A because it's still very good. I just recently got it. I can't wait to use it more, and I might even do an entire video using this thing because it's actually really cool. Got some unique abilities, and it's neat. It's neat to say the least. All right, Combat Gauntlet. What do you guys say? S tier or S plus tier? I don't know. I'm debating whether or not I should put it as S+. But, in all honesty, it's really... You know what? Yeah, let's do it. Let's do something daring and put the Combat Gauntlet as an S+ weapon. It is really insane, and everybody likes using it. It's ridiculous. But, continuing on, we got the Combat Slinger. Combat Slinger is exactly the same as this thing right here. I forgot what it's called. The Bomber Slinger? There's not really much difference. So, if the Bomber Slinger is C tier, this thing's going to be C tier as well. And now, believe it or not, I think I'm going to put another thing as an S+ tier. The Corn Launcher. This thing came out in Thanksgiving of 2019, I believe, and or maybe even earlier. It might have been Thanksgiving 2018. I don't really remember, but this thing is very oftentimes a one-shot kill if you upgrade this thing to the right abilities. Like, it's insane. It's actually ridiculously powerful, and if you have a chance to ever use the Corn Launcher, use it, because despite it only having one shot, it's insane. It gets the job done very, very well. Now, something that does not get the job done too well is the Cursed Staff. I've never been a fan of this weapon. It's not that powerful, unfortunately, and I'm going to put it as D tier. There's not much else to say there. There is some stuff to say about the Cyber Rocket Launcher, though. I don't know anything about this. Who knows about this? When did it come out? Bro, I literally do not know a single thing about this thing. So what? Do I put it as B tier? I'd say B. It's probably pretty average, right? I don't know. I could be completely wrong. What if this thing is S+? Dude, can you let me know down below in the comments? Because, like, I don't really know this thing. I feel awkward putting it in that rating, but hey, we got to continue on here. We got the Dark Mage wands, and, you know, unfortunately, over all these years, it's just not as powerful as it used to be. Believe it or not, this is a reskin of the Wizard Wand, and it's not as good as the Wizard Wand. I'm going to put this thing as D tier, just because it's overshadowed by the Wizard Wand. You never see anybody using the Dark Mage Wand anymore. Everybody's always using the Wizard Wand instead. Dark Matter Generator, it's another one of those weapons that used to be so popular back in the day, but nobody uses it anymore, and I don't really understand why. It's a C tier. It's neat. It's cool, but there's nothing too spectacular about it. We got this right here, the Deadly Beats. In all honesty, it's going to be the same thing as the base cannon. We have the base cannon right there. Well, guess what? It's going to be another C tier weapon. As you can see, it's a pretty common theme. There's going to be a lot of C and B tier weapons throughout this entire video. We got this thing here, the Debugger. The Debugger is better. This is going to be an A tier weapon. I remember when I've used this thing, I've always gotten great gameplay with it, better than a lot of these other weapons like the Blighter and the Big Buddy and the Champion Solar Cannon and stuff like that. So it's deserving of a higher rating than those things. A tier weapon. Next up, this thing, the Deceitful Cheater. I do not know anything about this thing, but I do know from some people that it's pretty powerful. So, you know what? I'm going to put it as A tier because I think it's quite a bit better than the Bomber Slinger and the Combat Slinger, which are sort of like the same type of weapon. So I think A tier is a pretty good rating for that thing. Next up, we got the Demolition Exoskeleton. I'm tempted to put this as S tier because it's a freaking exoskeleton and it's insane. But honestly, it's a bit weaker than some of the other exoskeletons in Pixel Gun 3D. So I'm going to actually put it as A tier and we're going to call it a day. Next up, we got this thing, the Demo Man. Unfortunately, the Demo Man is not really that great. Back in the day, it was pretty useful. You could actually do glitches with that thing. You could use this thing and have, you know, mines just set off and blow people up. But those mines back in the, now, actually, I should say, just aren't that good. And it's kind of gone downhill a lot. So Demo Man is a D tier weapon. However, we got the Destruction System, and this weapon is OP. It is a full-on OP weapon, and I'm going to put this as an S tier weapon. Not quite S+, but it is very close. Like, if I could choose one weapon from this entire section right here and put it into S+, well, actually, to be fair, I'd probably put the Battle Falcon into S+, but this is probably next. It's really, really good. And I need to drink some water, so give me a sec. Dude, it's hard to commentate for an entire hour, but we got a lot of weapons to go. As you can see, there are many, many weapons to go. We are not even close to finish. Let's go. We got this thing right here. This is the Double Dragon, and when I made a review of this thing, everybody was hyped about it, but back then, even then, no one really ever used it, and it's because it's just not that great, you know? It's pretty underpowered compared to a lot of these other heavy weapons in this game, so I'm going to have to put it as D tier. It's not quite at the same level as a lot of these other C tier weapons. Next up, we got the Double Gun. This is better than those weapons, and I'm going to say this is a B tier weapon. This is actually pretty powerful, and it's very underrated. A lot of people don't even know about this thing. A lot of people don't even know this thing exists, but it's actually very good, and it is a solid B tier weapon. Here we have the Dragon's Breath, and it pains me to do this, but I'm going to have to put this as C tier. Same with the Dragon King. Oh, man. These things are so... No, Dragon King is going to be B. Dragon King is B. Dragon Breath is C. These things were so OP back in the day. In 2014, everybody used the Dragon Breath, man. But unfortunately, it's gone downhill. Like, you know, if you go up against the Christmas Ultimatum, people are obviously going to kill you 100 to 1, you know? The Dragon King is a bit better, but it's not by much, and the only reason I think I'm actually putting this as B is just because it's newer, and it looks a bit cooler. Actually, to be fair, it doesn't look cooler. Which one do you like better? You can see the two right there. Do you like the Dragon King or the Dragon Breath? I think I actually might like the Dragon Breath. I like the red color. Maybe some of you guys like blue, but hey, I digress. Let's keep going. We got this right here, The Drone Combat Station. I just got this weapon today. I have not had a chance to use it, but from everybody I've heard, it's very, very powerful. And I think this is one of those weapons that's deserving of S tier, because this is one of those weapons that I think you can control the missiles. So that's very unique in and of itself, and it's better than the Stinger, which does a very similar thing. We got this right here, the Earth Spike spell. This is an A tier weapon, debatably S tier. I'm going to put it as A tier just because I still think things like the Cerebrus and this little, Ultimatum heavy weapon are a bit better. But this is probably the best spell in all of Pixel Gun 3D. It's very, very good, and I love using this thing. It's really cool. We have this right here, the Easter Bazooka. Easter Bazooka is probably just as powerful as the Corn Launcher, but I think it has a bit of a slower firing rate, if I'm not mistaken, and it might just be a tiny bit weaker. So I'm going to put this as an S tier weapon, but nobody knows about this thing, and it's a sleeper gun. If you have it, use it, because it's so awesome to flex on little kids when you have this thing and they didn't even know that this thing exists. So S tier weapon for the Easter Bazooka. It's really, really cool. We got this right here, the Ectoplasmic Grenade Launcher. And I remember when this thing came out, I was not like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever, but it's still pretty good. And I'd say A tier is probably the way to go. Emitter of Uncertainty is one of those weapons that I think is a bit less powerful than that. I'd say B tier. Pretty confident with that rating. But Energy Drill is probably going to be a C tier now. It's not as bad as the Charge Cannon and the Big Fatality Gun, but it's certainly gone downhill. Whereas the Eraser is one of those weapons that's still really good, which you can actually see right here. The Eraser is still probably S tier, just because this thing actually has the pulling in effect. Once somebody gets too close, they get sucked into it, which still makes it an S tier weapon. The Energy Drill is kind of just the worst version of this in every single way. The only reason the Eraser is not the S plus tier anymore is just because it's gotten a bit weaker over the years. And I'm pretty sure some of the players who've played since 2017 will remember that. You see a lot less people using this thing, and they opt to use the singular grenade with stuff like the Christmas Ultimatum instead of just using the Eraser. So pretty interesting. Anyways, continuing on, we got the Eye of Ra. This is another sleeper weapon. Very powerful. A tier, debatably S tier. I'm going to put it as A tier just because I can't say it's the same level as the Eraser. Anyways, continuing on here, we got this, the Fatal Melter. It has poison effect. I'd say that's pretty neat, but unfortunately, it's not as powerful as something like the Eraser. So it's probably going to be a B tier, and we're going to say that that's pretty good. Again, if there's anything that you disagree with throughout this video, please comment down below. Heavy weapons are pretty difficult to rank because they're so similar to one another. In all honesty, you take a look at something like the Armadillo, it's very similar to something like the Big Buddy. Or something like, even the Alien Shuriken Thrower is pretty similar to the A Killer. So, there's not too many differences between the weapons, and it's kind of hard to rank them, but I'm trying my absolute best. Now that I think about it, I actually think I'm going to put the A Killer a bit higher to B tier, just because I do remember now from personal accounts, I've actually gotten some pretty decent gameplay with it. So it's moved up a bit to B tier, and let's keep going. Ferocious Poleaxe is an S tier weapon. I'm tempted to put it as S plus, and in all honesty, I think I'm going to put it as S plus. Yes, it's an S plus tier weapon. It's one of the very best heavy weapons in this entire game. Moving along here, we got this, the Fireball Gauntlet. Unfortunately, the Combat Gauntlet is better. Fireball Gauntlet is still very good, and I would say it's probably B tier. No one really uses it anymore, but it's still very good, so B tier is probably a good rating. And then continuing on, we got the Fireball Spell. I'm going to say that that's a C tier. It's not as good as the Fireball Gauntlet, but it's still pretty average, to say the least. We got the Firestarter. This is a sleeper weapon, right? I'm going to put this weapon as B tier because I actually really like this thing a lot. It's better than some of those looping shot weapons like the Cherry Bomb and the Bastion, but, it can't really be on the same level of something like the Eye of Ra. The Eye of Ra is still obviously better. Demolition Exoskeleton, obviously better, but Firestarter, no one really uses it. It's a sleeper gun. Use it, because you're really going to actually have a lot of fun using that thing. Same with this. This is a bit less powerful than the Firestarter. The Firestorm is probably a C tier weapon, but it's another one of those really fun looping shot weapons that you'll actually really enjoy using. So Try it out. It's pretty cool. One weapon that is not that fun to use, unfortunately, is the Fireworks Launcher. And I'm actually going to put this as an F tier weapon. It is the same level of power as the Avalanche. It is extremely difficult to get kills with this thing, and I've never liked it. So, yeah. Fireworks Launcher, unfortunately, is one of the worst heavy weapons in this entire game. One of the better heavy weapons, though, is the Football Cannon. The Football Cannon is an A tier weapon, and it might even be S tier. It's got a massive radius, which is definitely going to help in maps like Pool Party and Silent School. Like, you can't avoid the soccer ball. It's like you're going up against a pro soccer player and he's kicking it directly at your face, right? He's going to hit you, right? That's basically what happens when you come across somebody with this thing in Silent School. It's a very, very good gun. But moving along here, we got this thing, the Frozen Hearts. Frozen Hearts is another one of those things that I don't really have too much experience with. I'm pretty sure it's an A tier weapon. It could be S, but I think A tier is probably a good rating for this thing. Gauntlet of Power, the Thanos Weapon, is probably another one of those A tier weapons. It could be S, and in all honesty, I might put it as S. I think we're going to put it as an S tier. It's actually one of the better ones. This, the Gem Power, is unusual in that despite it being one of those clan weapons, it's probably just an A tier weapon. I've used it. I've liked it. It's cool. It's like a minigun, but it shoots out rockets. But it runs out of ammo so fast that it's kind of hard to get consistent kills with that thing. And now we have the Ghost Lantern. You guys know where this thing is going to go. I'm going to put it as an S+ tier. The reason is because if you go into Silent School, you upgrade the Ghost Lantern to Mythical, to the max with good modules. You're going to have a one-shot kill weapon that goes all the way down the hallway, and it's completely unavoidable. People will die from this thing every single time you shoot down the hallway, and it's absolutely insane. This is definitely worthy of an S+ tier. Moving along, we got this, the Ghost Launcher. I do not really know too much about this thing, and I've never been that impressed with it. It's not as bad as things like the Double Dragon, but it's probably going to be a C tier weapon. We got the Gingerbread Home Zooka, which is another C tier weapon. As much as I'd love this thing to be higher in the ratings, because it's kind of cool, you know, and I don't really ever see people using it. It's an average rocket launcher, and there's nothing that special about it. Moving along, we got this, the Simple Grenade Launcher. It's not as good as the Fire Starter, but it's still pretty fun to use. Unfortunately, it's not got a lot of ammo, so I'm going to have to say it's probably a D tier weapon. Believe it or not, the Simple Grenade Launcher is still better than something like the Fireworks Launcher, which I find absolutely insane. Anyways, we got the Grenadier. The Grenadier is going to be another C tier. It's been out for a while now. It's kind of average, and it's nothing to write home about, nothing that special. Heart of the Volcano is an A tier weapon. This is very powerful, and I love that it has that burning effect. It's really, really good, and it might even be S tier. You know what? I think the Heart of the Volcano deserves S tier. I think this thing is actually one of the better heavy weapons, especially if you upgrade this thing. It's really, really good. And I've got to decrease the size of the list already. Let's keep going. We got this thing right here, the Heavy Gifter. Heavy Gifter used to be S+ tier, and it kills me to not be able to put this in S+ tier anymore. But it's not that good anymore, dude. It's still B tier, but it's really slow, and it's just hard to use, you know? We got the Heavy Spikosaur. I've never seen anybody use this thing. Haven't watched any YouTube videos on it, and I do not have it myself. So, it's debatable whether I can even put this thing as an S tier weapon or A tier. And you know what? What I'm going to do is I'm going to put it as S tier just because it's new. It's really cool. Looks awesome in my personal opinion. One of the best looking heavies in this entire game. And I would like everybody watching this video right now to comment down below whether you think the Heavy Spikosaur should be an S tier or A tier. Like, is it more similar to something like the Cole Frightener and the Big Data? Or is it on the same level of something like the Battle Falcon or, you know, the Destruction System? Please let me know down below in the comments. Let's keep going. Hippo. F. In fact, F-. It's like worse than the Avalanche. I hate it. I've always hated it. It is so hard to use. Not fun at all. So, yes, don't you dare go in my comment section and say, oh, it should be higher. It's a F-, okay? Ho-Ho Rocket is nuts. This is an A+, not A+. I was going to say A+. That's not even a rating. It's an A weapon, and it's cool. It's Santa's gun. It's fun. It's unique, and I like it a lot. Huge boy. If you upgrade this thing and you use all the right modules and stuff, this thing could turn into an S-tier weapon. And I think I'm actually going to put this as S because it is very, very powerful. One weapon that is not that powerful anymore is the Hurricane. The Hurricane is the same thing as the Armageddon. There's really not many differences between the two. So if Armageddon is C tier, Hurricane is going to be C tier. And that's going to be the same with the Missile Thrower later on in this video. Hydra is going to be a D tier. I do not like the Hydra. I've never liked the Hydra. It's been very hard to get good gameplay with that thing. It's debatable that it could even be F. But I'm going to hold F because I don't think it's as bad as something like the Fireworks Launcher and the Avalanche. So let's go put it as D tier and let's continue on. This thing is the Hyper Mega Cannon. And I think, if I remember correctly, it's probably a solid A tier weapon. It's good, it's powerful, it gets the job done, and it's very, very fun. I think fun is more important than everything else, and it just looks really cool as well. It looks way different from everything else on this list right now. Next up, we got the Ice Club. This is going to be an S+ tier. As much as I hate to put it as S+ tier, it's got that cool little thing where, like, the stuff comes out of the ground when you swing it. So, like, it's got a very unique ability. Everybody still uses it. You upgrade this thing. It's ridiculously OP. I hate it. I hate it. Don't get me wrong. But it is a freaking S+ tier because it's one of the best in the entire game. Anyways, we got the Instigator. I've never really been a fan of the Instigator. This is, you know, in sharp contrast to something like the Night Hunter, which I think came out at the same time, which was a primary weapon, and I loved the Night Hunter, and I thought that was a tier. I think the Instigator is either B or C. I'm going to put it as a B tier weapon just because it's not as bad as something like the Bastion or the Combat Slinger, but it is not as good as some of the other things. This one, though, the Invincible Lion, is. And the Invincible Lion is debatably an S tier weapon. I'm going to say it's an S tier weapon. When I used this thing, I was so shocked at how powerful it is, and I think most people would say the same as well. Oh, but look! We got the Judge. You remember this thing, right? This is an S+ tier. The Judge was like a one-shot kill, and when you shot it, you could control the rocket. You, like, had a camera on the rocket that you would, like, move the rocket exactly toward an enemy. And if that's not the most OP thing ever, I don't know what is. This weapon was so broken that they removed it from the game entirely, right? And I'm still trying to get the developers to, like, give it to just me, because that would be freaking awesome. But yeah, this is an S+ tier, and it deserves S+ tier. Moving along, we got the Kaboom. The Kaboom is pretty average in 2021. It was much more powerful back in the day, but I would still say it's pretty deserving of, like, you know, B tier, because it's very similar to the Adamant Bomber in a lot of respects. So, yeah, I'm confident about that. Killer Whale, though, it's kind of gone downhill a lot. And in all honesty, I'm almost tempted to put it as D tier, but I am going to keep it at C because it's still, you know, a solid gun. Most people won't use it, though. It's definitely going to need to have some work if they want people to use it more often to be back up to, like, S and S+, like it used to be. Anyways, continuing on here. We have another weapon that I personally think should be an S+ tier. The Lance Soul Card. It's pretty hard to get S+ tier, but every single time I use this thing, it is almost always a one-shot kill, and it has a decent capacity. A lot of other things going for it. It's insanely powerful. One of the best heavy weapons in the entirety of this game. So, we have another S+ tier weapon. Now we have this, the Laser Minigun. Back in the day, in 2014, this was the very best weapon in the entire game, with a possible exception of something like the Anti-Gravity Blaster. This weapon still is very powerful, but it's gone downhill in certain respects. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a B rating, and I still think that's very good. It's better than a lot of the other 2014 weapons like, you know, the Armageddon and the Base Cannon and the Anti-Gravity Blaster. So that goes to show that it's still better than a lot of the other weapons released at its time. Loud Piggy? I don't like the Loud Piggy anymore. As much as I hate to say it because it's a cool little pig, he's a D tier. He's not that great. He's unfortunately pretty underpowered, and yeah, he is a D tier weapon, unfortunately. Now we got this. This is the Manga Gun. The Manga Gun is everything that the Big Fatality Gun is, except a bit better. And in all honesty, it's actually quite a bit better. So I'm going to put this as a B tier weapon because it's one of the better charge sought weapons in this game. It's very, very powerful, gets the job done. It's almost A tier, but you know what? I'm going to put it as A tier just because it's cool. It's really freaking cool. It's one of those anime weapons that's just neat to have. We have the Manticore. The Manticore is a slept-on weapon. I'm going to put this as a B tier, if not A tier. You know what? B tier. B tier. Manticore, no one knows about it. No one talks about it, but it's actually pretty good, and you're going to get good gameplay with it if you do use it, especially in a map like Silent School because it has that ricocheting ability. It's basically the better version of the Alien Cannon in every single way, right? So instead of the Alien Cannon being a D tier, this thing is B tier, and that's very, very impressive. Now, we have the Maximum Cruelty. And the Maximum Cruelty is probably an A tier weapon. You know, I don't remember too much about this thing because I never really used it before. I saw some videos on it, but I think A tier is probably a good rating for it. This is the Medusa, and the Medusa is actually, it's probably pretty similar to the Gem Power in a lot of respects. It's good, it's solid, it's not S or S+. It's an A tier weapon and a very solid one at that. Next up, we got this right here, the Meteorite Destroyer. I don't remember this thing too well. It's been out for a while, and in all honesty, it's probably, you know, a B tier weapon. I'd say that's still pretty good. So, yeah, we're going to keep it like that. However, the Meteor Shower is a bit less powerful. It's C tier, and that's still very good. As I said in the beginning, C tier is still good, so we're going to just keep it like that. Next up, we got the Military Grenade Launcher. Military Grenade Launcher is basically the same as the Firestorm, but I don't like how it looks as much as the Firestorm, so I'm going to put it as D tier. Really, the only differences between these two weapons is just how they look. And I like how the Firestorm looks so much better. So, yeah, that's why that thing is C. That's why this thing is D. Anyways, continuing on, we got the Mines Launcher, and this is another one of those weapons that's really gone downhill. This thing is very old. It's out even before the Bastion came out, right? And the Bastion is still better than the Mines Launcher. So, yeah, Mines Launcher is unfortunately a D tier weapon. Missile Thrower, as I said, is another one of those weapons that's going to be a C tier weapon. Just like the Hurricane, just like the Armageddon, they're all three the same thing. They all basically do the same thing in Pixel Gun 3D. So, if I rank the Armageddon as a C tier weapon, I'm going to have to rank the same to the Missile Thrower. Let's keep going. Nuclear Launcher. Look at this thing. I'm going to zoom in real quick. You see this thing? Most people don't have this. Most people didn't even know this thing existed. You only remember this thing back from the very early days of Pixel Gun 3D. This weapon was an intermediate upgrade between the rocket launcher, which we can see right to the left there, and then the Armageddon. So this was basically the middle upgrade, right? Between the Apocalypse and the Armageddon. But this thing was actually very powerful, and I would go as far to say that back in those times, it was an A tier weapon because the Armageddon was an S+ tier. Back then, the Armageddon was all the way up here, and then the Apocalypse was all the way down there. So it only makes sense that the Nuclear Launcher was right there. But Armageddon, go back there. Nuclear Launcher, right there. Let's keep it going. We got the Nutcracker, another slept-on weapon in Pixel Gun 3D. This is A tier, and no one thinks about it, but it's actually very good. Try it out next time you see it in your inventory, because it's actually very, very fun. This thing right here is, what even is this thing called? The Offensive Catapult. I've heard a lot of things about this thing. I'm pretty sure it's probably an A tier weapon, but I don't know too much about it, so we're going to just keep going. Offensive Fireworks is an S tier weapon. It's not quite S+. It's very, that's reserved for very special weapons like the Judge and the Ghost Lantern. Very iconic Pixel Gun 3D weapons, but Offensive Fireworks is probably one of the very best S tier. And it's almost into S+ tier, but we're going to keep it as S tier just for the heck of it. Next up, here we have the Offensive Rocket System. You see this thing right here? This is a very unique weapon because you can't get this weapon. However, there are some players that do have it. You need to create a new account in Pixel Gun 3D, a second account at level 1. and then you can buy this thing. Only low-level players right now in 2021 can get the offensive rocket system. And back in, if you're level 1, this is without a doubt one of the most OP things ever. So I'm actually going to rank this as S+, just because for level 1 players, all the way up to like level 15, if you have the offensive rocket system, you're going to win no matter what. This thing is absolutely insane. And it looks cool as well. I love the purple on it. Anyways, god dang, man. My voice is starting to go. We got the paintball machine gun. Zoom in real quick. Take a look at it. You see this thing? This thing was only released for Block Crash for a very short period of time. You can't get this thing anymore. No one has this weapon. You only could use this thing in Block Crash. And back in Block Crash, it was very solid. It's an A tier, and not much else to say there. No one can get this thing anymore. You're only going to see it from this video right here. Next up, we got this thing here, the perfect rocket launcher. It's not perfect because it's not an S+ tier, but it's still very good. And I'd say it's an A tier. Gets the job done, but it's not that spectacular by any means. Now, this right here is an S tier. This is the Pga06 Tv. I almost want to give it an S+ tier, but the only thing is it only works well in a very small amount of maps. And that means, only Silent School, Pool Party, and a couple of things like that. Like, if you try to go into King of the Hill with this thing, it's going to be very difficult to get a kill with this thing, especially, maps like Paradise Resort that are much bigger. So it's much more exclusive, whereas something like the Heart of Volcano and the Corn Launcher, those weapons can be, actually pretty useful in a map like Paradise Resort. But it's really cool, to say the least, and it's one of the most unique weapons, if not the most unique weapon on this entire list. There's nothing cooler, in my opinion, than the Pga06 Tv. So if I was ranking these weapons based off of how cool they look, I'd probably put that thing at number 1. Anyways, we got this, the Piranha. I don't like the Piranha. I've never liked the Piranha, and I'm actually going to put this thing as a D tier. Yes, some people who like the Piranha might say, oh my god, Exotic Gaming, how dare you? But hey, I don't really like it. That's all I got to say there. Next up here, we got this, the Pixel Cola Refresher. This is a solid A tier weapon. It's not quite S tier, but A tier is still a very, very good rating for it, and I'm very happy about that. The Plan B, I don't know much about. I really do not know anything about this thing. I've never used it before, so I can't really say much about it. I think it's probably a solid A tier. If not, maybe an S tier, but just for the sake of it, I'm going to put it as A tier just to be safe and not anger any people in this video. Next up, Plastic Bazooka. This thing is actually a very slept-on weapon, and I am going to give it S tier. Just because it's very unique, right? It's very powerful. It's like a 1 or 2 shot kill. It's very solid. It works well in a lot of different ranges. I just love this thing, dude. And if you have the chance to buy it alongside the plastic rifle and that plastic sniper, and you have that set, it's a very solid set even into 2021. So, Plastic Bazooka, good gun. Let's keep going. Portal Cannon. This is a legend gun. This is awesome. It's an S+ tier. You shoot 2 different portals and you go between them. It's the best gun to use for glitches in Pixel Gun 3D, and it's just a super iconic gun, Might not be the most powerful thing in the entire world, but it's super iconic, and it's so useful for so many different scenarios, and it's definitely deserving of S+, if not even higher, which we might make a separate S++ tier at the very end of this video. Next up, we got this thing right here, the Portal Rifle. I've never used this thing before, so I don't really know too much about it. I think this thing might be an S tier, and I think I might keep it as S tier. No, you know what? No, I'm going to put it as A tier just because since I haven't used it before, I can't really safely put it as S tier. S tier weapons are pretty special. Something like the Heart of the Volcano, the TV, the offensive rocket system, or not the offensive rocket system, the offensive fireworks. They're very, very special weapons, and I can't really say the same about the portal rifle. So, yeah, let's keep going. Primal Beast. As much as I love this thing, it looks so freaking cool. It's just overshadowed by so many things in Pixel Gun 3D now. I don't understand why, but yeah, it's a C tier weapon. Pretty average, nothing that special about it. The Prophet Staff, however, is actually a bit better. I'm going to put this thing as a B tier weapon. Based off of my personal experience with this thing, I think B is pretty good. So, yeah, that's the Prophet Staff for us. Next up, we got this, the Proton Freezer. Proton Freezer is debatably an A tier weapon. But, in all honesty, I'm going to keep it as B tier. No, I'm going to put it as A tier. It's good. I know a lot of other people would say that's probably an S tier, but based off of my personal experience, I've not been as much of a fan of this thing as some of these other weapons in this list. So, yeah, that's why I'm putting it as A tier as opposed to S tier. Anyways, let's keep going here. We got this, the Pulley Blasty, another weapon that I do not know anything about. So, I'm going to put this as A tier just because if I don't know much about it and it's a pretty new weapon, it's probably going to be A tier because Pixel Gun 3D has a tendency to release very powerful weapons in the more newer updates to Pixel Gun 3D. So, yeah, that's what we're going to do. Got the Pumpkin Thrower. Pumpkin Thrower, despite it being very old, is still holding its own. It could be S tier, but it's not quite. What did I just do? Oh, Lord. Presentation mode. You guys didn't see anything. That was very unusual. Okay. All right. Why did it put the OX Bad Co in the hippo? They didn't want to be they didn't want to be an F-, but they're going to be an S-, okay? All right. Anyways, yeah. Continuing on with the video here, we got the Pumpkin Thrower, and I'm going to put that thing as A tier. It's debatable that it could be into S tier, but let's go keep it as A tier. We might change things around at the very end of this video. We got the Quadruple Death, and I'm going to put this thing as a B tier. Actually, no. I'm going to put this thing as a C tier. It's really cool. Don't get me wrong. Sounds neat, has a cool name, but it's not that powerful compared to the fact that, you would think with something like Quadruple Death, it would be ridiculously powerful. It's very similar to something like the Armageddon in 2021, so there's that. We got the Redneck Cannon, or the Redneck Bazooka, whatever it's called. Honestly, as much as I would love to put this thing as like S+ tier or S tier, it's not really. It's a little less powerful than you would think. So I'm going to put it as A tier, and I think that's probably a good rating for it. We got this, the Render Station. It's probably another A tier weapon. Good, solid gun that gets the job done. Not quite S tier, but A tier seems to be the most common rating that we have right here. We have the Renegade, which is very average. It's a C tier. It's going to be very similar to the Ghost Launcher, which you guys can see right here. It's basically a reskin of the Ghost Launcher. It's basically the same thing. But continuing on, Rocket Crossbow, another one of those things that's just a C tier, average weapon, nothing too spectacular about it, but hey, continuing on here. We got this, which is called the Rocket Hands. The Rocket Hands is probably B tier. It's old. It's been around for a couple of years now, but it still holds its own as a very solid gun. This is the Rocket Jumper. Now, the Rocket Jumper is interesting because it had a very good use back in the day when you could actually use it to jump up and not take any damage, but people have figured out ways around that where you can use other weapons and not take any damage when you're, jumping up. So it's kind of lost its use, and as an actual weapon itself, it's not that powerful. So I'm going to put it as a D tier, and I think that's probably how it's going to stay. We got this. This is the regular good old rocket launcher. It's very similar to some of the things that we see here, like the Easter Bazooka and the Corn Launcher. However, it's not as powerful as those things. And in all honesty, it's kind of underwhelming, so I'm going to put it as D tier. Let's keep going. We got this, the Royal Ashbringer. This is an A tier weapon. Royal Ashbringer is quite powerful. It's not quite S tier, even though I kind of wish I would put it as S tier. But you know what? We're going to just keep it like that, and I think that should be pretty good. I'm going to probably adjust a couple of things as we finish off this video here. We got this, the Saboteur. This thing is debatably S+ tier. It's very unique. It's got a very cool attribute to it that it shoots up into the sky. And in all honesty, I think I'm going to actually put it as S+ tier. Very iconic gun. We're going to remember it for years to come. It's an S+ tier weapon. Let's keep going. Sharkado. Sharkado is a very solid gun as well. It's an A tier. It shoots out a stream beam, but it's actually good, unlike some other weapons that do the same thing. This is the Shrimposaur. Shrimposaur is probably a bit better than the Sharkado, and I'm going to say that that's an S tier weapon. It's also one of the coolest looking heavy weapons in this entire game. This is the Siege Mode Gauntlet, and this is another S tier. Siege Mode Gauntlet is ridiculously powerful, really gets the job done, and it's fun. That's the most important thing. It's actually a very fun weapon to use, based off of my experience. I really like that thing. Signal Pistol. We got another F- weapon. I mean, can you blame me? It's the freaking Signal Pistol, dude. You can't get kills with this thing in multiplayer unless you're level 1, right? So, I mean, it's just the Signal Pistol. It's another proper F- weapon. We got the Sly Avenger, which is very similar to the Kaboom. Basically the same weapon, so that's another B tier. The Smart Bullet Bazooka, which is S+. Yes, we have 2 lines now on the S+ row. Little quick history for Pixel Gun 3D. The Smart Bullet Bazooka was basically very similar to the Bee Swarm spell that we talked about in the primary tier list video. You would shoot 4 different bullets out of the Smart Bullet Bazooka, and they were Mario bullets that would just find, heat seek wherever the nearest enemy is, and then they would hit them, and they would explode. You would not even need to aim. You could just shoot directly up into the sky, and they would turn around and hit people and kill them, and it was absolutely insane. So broken that it was removed, just like the Judge. So, yeah, Smart Bullet Bazooka and the Judge are rightfully at S+ tier. Let's keep going. Sock Bomber is actually very powerful, and I would say it's another one of those A-tier weapons. There are so many A-tier weapons because these weapons are all so similar to one another. There's such minute differences. It's so hard to rank these things, man. And, you know, here's another one. This is the Soda Launcher. I'm going to say that this is probably C tier, but really there's not much difference between C and B, so it's kind of hard to say where this should be. Soda Pop, that actually should be in B. If the Soda Launcher is going to be in C, the Soda Pop is a bit better than the Soda Launcher. So, hey, Soda plus Pop is going to be in the B tier. And now we have another weapon that is properly an S+ tier weapon. Right now, it's probably one of the very best heavy weapons in the entirety of Pixel Gun 3D. The Solar Flare is insane. It's broken. It's a one-shot kill. It's ridiculous, and it is deserving of a one-shot S+ tier rating. Continuing on, Solar Cannon. It's basically the same thing as the Champion Solar Cannon, except a bit less powerful. So I'm going to put that thing as C tier, and I think that's pretty good. Soul Stone is basically the same thing as the Ghost Lantern, and it really wouldn't make sense to put this thing lower if the Ghost Lantern is S+ tier as well, should it? Yeah, we got another S+ tier weapon there. So, hey, there we go. Soul Thief. This is an S tier weapon. This used to be one of the very best heavy weapons in the entire game. It's gone down a bit, but it's still ridiculously powerful and most oftentimes a one-shot kill. Next up, this thing right here is the Space Disinfector. It's probably C tier. I've never been much of a fan. It's very similar to the Dark Matter Generator, but, you know, C tier, still pretty good. We're getting close to the end here. Got the Spark Shark. It's just a bit less powerful than the Killer Whale. And it kind of sucks to have to put it as D tier, but in all honesty, I've never been a fan in terms of how powerful this thing actually is. It's really hard to get good gameplay with this thing, even harder than the Killer Whale. Now, this thing right here, the Spirit Mask, is interesting because it's kind of a slept-on weapon, just like a lot of the other ones we're talking about in this video. I'm tempted to put it as a S tier just because this thing actually has a shield as well, a bit of a shield. So, you know, should I put it as S tier or should I put it as A tier? I'm going to put it as S tier, and let's just live with it, okay? Keep going. We got the Stinger here. The Stinger's cool, but it's not that powerful anymore. It's kind of hard to use. It's really unique in that it has the ability to actually control the rockets. But it's kind of hard, and actually, I think I'm going to put it as C tier just because it's not really that powerful anymore. Stinger 3000 is a bit better than the Stinger, so we're going to put that as B tier. And this right here, the Storm of All Seas, is an easy S tier weapon. Not quite S+, but when this thing first came out, it was probably an S+ weapon. It's very, very powerful. We're getting close to the end here. We got the Submarine Drone Station, and I think this is very easily an S tier weapon. Could be S+, but you know what? We're going to keep it as S just because it's you know, it could be a two-shot kill sometimes. And S is still very, very good. We got this here. This is the Temple Guardian. Probably B tier. you know, there's not much else I could say about that, you know? It's hard for me to talk after an hour, but there's not much to say about the Temple Guardian. It used to be much more powerful, not as much anymore. B tier is still very, very good. Same with this thing, the 10 o'clock Postman. Actually, I'm going to put this thing as A tier. It's a bit better than the Temple Guardian, but it's lost a bit of its power over the years. We got the Tesla generator, or the Tesla cannon, I should say. Not that powerful. It's actually pretty underwhelming, and it's debatable that it could be an actual F weapon. And I think I am going to put it as an F weapon. It's one of the weakest heavy weapons in this entire game, unfortunately. And there's not many others that are worse than it. Although it probably could be in between, because it's better than the fireworks launcher and the avalanche. Let's just be very clear about that. Anyways, we got this thing. I have no idea what this is. I literally have a list of all the weapons, and I can't even read it. It's called the Tomianum? What is this thing? It looks ridiculously powerful. But again, I don't really want to put something in S tier if I've never used it before. So I'm going to put it as A tier, and hopefully that's okay. You guys can let me know down below in the comments, but we'll have to see. We got this, the Torpedo Launcher, S tier. I love this thing. Really cool, just like the submarine drone station, one of my favorite heavy weapons in this game. I always use this, always get great gameplay, but since it's not a one-shot kill, I can't really put it as S+ tier. Moving on, we got the Total Planner. Total Planner is another one of those S tier weapons. Haven't really used it too much, but every gameplay I've seen, you know, they get great gameplay with this thing, so it's probably a pretty solid S tier weapon. Toy Bomber is going to be the same as the Adamant Bomber. I can't really put this thing lower because it's basically the same thing, right? Adamant Bomber is a B tier weapon. Same with the Toy Bomber. We have this, which is another weapon I did not know existed, the Warhorse. What is that? Okay, I have to put that as A tier just because I don't even know what that is, right? And then the Wizard Wand. Oh, this thing, dude, this has a lot of backstory to it, and I really want to put it as S tier just because, you know, it might pretty soon go back down to like A or something like that. It's had multiple peaks of being the most powerful thing like ever, okay? Like back in the day, this thing shot through walls and was like completely broken. And then this thing was like a one-shot area damage and is still like a two-shot. So it's still very, very powerful when you upgrade this thing. And I like it a lot. And we're finally at the very final weapon here. This is the Yeti Spirits. And, you know, it's better than the Loud Picky, which is a D tier weapon, but it's very similar. So I'm going to have to put it as C tier. And with that being said, that concludes our ranking. Let's go zoom in back to 100% and take a look at our entire tier list of every single heavy weapon in this game. As a matter of fact, before we actually do, I am going to rank a couple of weapons a bit higher. And in this final row, I am going to name it S+. So let's go do that. S++. It's going to be pink. These are going to be the ultimate weapons of Pixel Gun 3D. And if I were to choose like 3 or 4, I would say the Judge is deserving of going into that ranking. Probably the Christmas Ultimatum would go into that ranking. The Ghost Lantern and Smart Bullet Bazooka. All these other weapons are actually, and the Portal Cannon too, right? All these other weapons are, you know, just as powerful probably, but they're just not as iconic as these weapons right here in Pixel Gun 3D, right? These weapons are some of the most iconic in Pixel Gun 3D history, and I love them. They're awesome. They're really freaking cool. And I would love to be able to have the Smart Bullet Bazooka and the Judge just for me so I could make my videos. I don't want to have everybody spamming those things anymore. But yeah, so we have those 5 as our S++. And our S+ tier weapons are this thing right here, the Combat Gauntlet, the Corn Launcher, Ferocious Poleaxe, Ice Club, Lance Soul Card, I believe it's called, the Offensive Rocket System, the Saboteur, the Solar Flare, and the Soul Stone. The only reason why the Soul Stone is not at the same level as this is it's less iconic, you know? People still choose to use the Ghost Lantern over the Soul Stone, and I think the Ghost Lantern looks a bit better. But hey, with that being said, if you've watched this far, guys, then you probably would enjoy the primary video, which I have right here. I did an entire list of every single primary weapon ranked in Pixel Gun 3D, just like we did with the heavy weapons. So if you guys would like to check that video out, All I ask is you just go down below in the description and click on that video and watch and see if you enjoy it. If you guys did stay this far, though, please leave a like and subscribe down below. As I said, comment down below any changes you would do to this list. If there's anything that you disagree with, maybe you're like, no, exotic gaming, what? This thing right here, that should be an S++ tier. What are you talking about, right? But I just love to hear your guys' opinions, so please let me know down below. Thank you so much, though, guys. It's been an hour. I've had a lot of fun. Hope you guys did as well, and I will see you all later.